The history of cheese making is thought to have originated through the transportation of milk in the bladders made of ruminants in the stomachs of animals due to the inherent supply of rennet. While there is no evidence showing exactly when or where cheese making originated, it is thought to have originated in Europe, Central Asia, the Middle East, or even the Sahara. Even some of the earliest findings of cheese making can date back to 5500 BC in Poland. They've discovered small pots and possible cheese strainers. They know that when cheese was made in hotter climates, such as the Sahara, that they had heavier salted cheeses to prevent the cheeses from spoiling. But in some places like Europe, the cheeses didn't require as much salt, so therefore the textures and the tastes were apparently different from the other cheeses that we can see from the warmer climates. A lot of the cheese was kind of trial and error. Bacteria played a very important role in how cheese developed and how it was produced. There were a lot of different methods between either making your own or finding bacteria in cultures that worked very well with your cheeses. Certain kinds of milk need certain types of bacteria, as well as if you want certain characteristics in your cheeses, there are certain bacteria that help with creating air pockets and those holes that we can traditionally see in stuff like Swiss cheese and other ones like that. So when it comes to milk and making cheeses, it is all about this acidity. The best thing that you want to take into consideration is that it depends on the amount of calcium that is able to hold the protein molecules together. If there's not enough calcium in the milk, then it will not form that nice ball of cheese that we have come to know. You would actually get lumps that'll fall away and they'll just crumble and break, which is why using things like the additives in your cheese. Calcium chloride is a good additive to add to the cheeses, and that's really what makes the cheese solid and gives it that hard texture. Using any of the food acids would give you that more softer cheese that we kind of know and love. But it really is an art. That's why they're called arsons for cheese making. It's techniques and figuring out what works with what textures can help create a certain kind of cheese, and the aging process also plays a very important role because these chambers that you have to put the cheeses in, they're very temperature controlled, they're humidity controlled, they're above 60 degrees in some cases. I think there was like some of them that were like between 50 to 60 degrees, but the humidity factors range anywhere between 60% to all the way up to 90% and above, depending on what the cheese makers have found works best for their kind of bacteria and their kind of cultures that they're using in their cheese making processes. Some of the first industrial cheese making was done in Switzerland back in, I believe, 1815, but the US did a lot better when they tried to do the manufacturing back in 1851 as far as like large scale. Buying the equipment at home to make your own cheeses is actually quite affordable. When you do go into the larger scale manufacturing concept, it does get a little bit pricier, but it really just depends on what you're planning on doing with your cheese, how you want to utilize it, and what kind of cheese you're actually making. There are a lot of rules though, so taking a look at some of the ones that I was able to find. The current United States Food and Drug Administration regulation states that the cheese can be made from unpasteurized raw milk as long as the cheese has undergone the aging process no less than 60 days at a temperature no less than 35 degrees. And it applies to cheeses made domestically as well as any of them that we do actually have imported. Certain cheese styles are excluded from this, including the fresh soft ripened cheeses, which must be pasteurized no matter the extent of the aging process, although there has not been a legislation since like 1949, and the FDA is hypersensitive of the safety of using raw milk and cheeses, especially the concern if they don't or if they're not following that 60-day rule. So taking a look into some of the other rules, because it's dairy products, if you want to look into processing milk or milk products into any manufacturing dairy products, you are required to have the manufacturing dairy plant license regardless of the size of the plant, the volume otherwise produced. Now, I'm a little back and forth on this. The rules, when you were reading it, it doesn't specifically say cheese making, but it says cheese products. So this would possibly still be something that we would have to look at. And if it is, that license number I found was DY-306 for more information. An inspection is required. In addition, there are a number of requirements which may include but are not limited to labeling requirements, pasteurization, drug screening, and the producer's security. But there were other websites that gave some other really good information kind of regarding the same thing for Michigan. It says the state requirements that affect food and the markets may include inspections of the processing facilities, plain review, review of labels, packaging products, inspections of scales, the collection of food samples to be analyzed for contamination to determine if the ingredients are labeled correctly, and that they may also visit the business for like inspections and stuff too. The Michigan agency is responsible for licensing, labeling, storaging, recording, weighing, and measuring food. They'll go ahead and they kind of monitor. They don't have a pre-approved label system through all of it for the Michigan dairy, but they do want to go ahead and take a look at what you have and make sure that everything is labeled correctly for the public. And it also depends on how you're storaging, how you're shipping the product, to make sure that you're following all the safety guidelines for it. Now, taking a look into the possibilities for Jackson College and what we could possibly do, I think that there's a large variety. We have the ability to grow a lot of things through the agricultural program, which could be really beneficial and nice additives like honey or fresh herbs or anything else. If we did do a honey, depending on where we located it at on the property, we could get different flavors and tastes and stuff if we were able to add it in. I was able to also find some really good websites about wrapping cheeses in certain kinds of wood to give it kind of a mesquite or like a different kind of texture or flavor. But I also like the little cheese ball ideas like in these pictures because they would be something a little bit easier to kind of start off with until we kind of figure out more so what our market is, and also once we kind of establish that, it'll make little things a little bit easier. But figuring out how we want to package our product, how we want to label it, making sure that it's appealing and attractive. There's a couple of different techniques, product sampling, and also we could do a couple surveys through the school itself to kind of get an idea and opinions, get some feedback before we actually decide to take our stuff to market. Making sure that everything is correctly labeled, that we actually take the time to do our nutrition and make sure that we know what all those aspects are, will be really important. Some of the local meat markets I think would be a good start, as well as the small grocery chains as far as where we could sell our products. Question was 100 pounds of cheese. So depending on it, it's about 10 pounds or 5 quarts of cow's milk or goat's milk, which to make a pound of cheese, and it's about 6 pounds of sheep. With that, 1 gallon is 8.6 pounds, so 100 pounds would be about 125 gallons, or if we were doing sheep's milk, about 75 gallons. Price-wise, though, if we were to do cow's milk, we're looking at about $331 just for the milk supply. If we did any of the goat or sheep, we're looking about $900, but that's not even including any of the supplies, additives, products, or stuff that would go into it. So taking that into consideration, cow's milk would probably be the cheapest, but if you wanted to do something more unique, you're going to have to pay for it. But that is what I have on what we were asked to cover. The only thing I think I did forget to mention was the cost of some of the equipment, which it really just depends. Like I said, I think previously, if you get the stuff at home, it's not that expensive for you to have your own home cheese making kits, or like just a couple $100. But if you're wanting to do more of the large scale, it is going to cost a little more money. They have like heated vats. Everything has to be temperature regulated. You need to make sure that you're maintaining temperatures, and all that stuff's really important when you're trying to figure out, again, what kind of cheese you want to make. So thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed my video.